Good evening. I would like to speak about a new series, a story with its message for the week. We are a week before Shavuot, before Chag Shavuot, and usually Parashat Bechukotai is at this time. You know, by the way, Parashat Bechukotai is a parasha in which the Jewish people reads on Shabbat a section that has to do with the klalot, curses. And those curses, of course, you know, this text of the curses, consisting of approximately 100 curses, appear in two parashiot, one at the end of the book of Vaikra, in Parashat Bechukotai, and this past Shabbat we had Shabbat Behar and Bechukotai, two parashiot, and another text for the Kelalot, for these curses, they appear again, of course, in a longer version, at the end of the book of Devarim in Parashat Kitavo. And normally there is a dilemma going on in the Jewish communities on those Shabbatot. This type of Shabbat, among the Ashkenazim, it's called Shabbat Beracha, the Shabbat of blessings. Of course, it's an expression that is the reverse of what it means. It's known in the vernacular of the Aramaic Leshon Sagi Nehor. It's like a blind person, you don't call him blind in Hebrew, but to be refined, you call him Sagi Nehor, the man who has a lot of light, which is exactly the opposite of what he is. So the same thing also, we use this expression for many things that appear to be negative, so we mention them in a positive way. So instead of saying Shabbat Klalot, the Shabbat of the curses, we say Shabbat Bracha. And what happens is that people are extremely fearful of being called to the Torah on that specific section. Yesterday we had to call, it is in the section of Chamishi, the fifth section, the fifth portion of the parasha. And now it is a problem to find someone who is willing to be called on that section, because we are going to read on him those kelalot, those curses. And who wants that? I remember there used to be a certain minhag because of this dilemma. So the gabbais of the shuls, of the synagogues, they used to invite the shamash, the sextant, the one who serves the synagogue, is hired by the synagogues to do all its needs and everything. So they call him, he has no choice, he has to accept, and he is the one who usually is called to that portion. In some other places it is the Rabbi, because the Rabbi, he is more intellectual in Torah, so therefore he knows that this is not really something to fear. On the contrary, it is something to listen to, and because it is for a purpose to awaken our heart to teshuvah, to repentance, and so forth. So why fear? It's like the XXII, alav shalom, says. He was talking about those people who are afraid to be called on this portion of the Torah. He says, "It is mashal lemahad davar domeh." It looks like a person who is going to cross a field full of traps and obstacles and thorns. And then he says, since he has to cross it, he doesn't want to see, so he says to blindfold him. So he wants to cross that area blindfolded. Is it going to help him? On the contrary, he's going to even walk in a definite trap or something. It's even more dangerous than at least when you open your eyes. So the same thing also for people who close their eyes, they don't want to hear those curses. And they keep on going into their darkness without nothing that will awaken them. That's what the XXII says. So there are many rabbis who are not afraid of that, and they choose to be called on that section. I did that myself. I always, the last few years, since I see I don't want to sadden anyone or to hurt the feelings of anyone, so I ask to be called on that portion. In fact, there is a story of a very famous name in the world of Hasidim, of Hasidut. A very great tzaddik who lived approximately 200 years ago, maybe less. His name was Rabbi Benhaim of Chernobyl, a real great tzaddik. I mean, there are stories about the XXII, who was, when he was a little child, he used to go after midnight when no one saw him, and he would close himself in a synagogue waiting for this tzaddik, Rabbi Benhaim, to appear and to come to study his works of Kabbalah, thinking that nobody is behind him. And that's the XXII says that he saw with his own eyes how Rabbi Benhaim, as soon as he starts learning works of Kabbalah after midnight, he sees the light, a fire, like such a glow that was surrounding the tzaddik. So this tzaddik, when he was a young man, in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov was, of course, the spiritual leader of all the Hasidim. He was the one who initiated the movement of the Hasidim. At that time, the Baal Shem Tov was the one who was reading the Torah. So he called upon this young man named Rabbi Benhaim, who was already a tzaddik, but nobody knew him really then. And he called him on that portion of the Kelalot. So Rabbi Benhaim at that time, he was a little bit hurt that he was called on that specific portion. He didn't understand why. Not that he was afraid of the Kelalot, but he says, why me? Why, the thought of him maybe that he is so lowly. So of course he couldn't refuse. And Rabbi Benhaim was known as a very sick man then, very sick. And they say that he was full of pain, he was affected by all kinds of maladies. He suffered. So now he was called in that section, and the Baal Shem Tov read the Torah, and when he read that section, Rabbi Benhaim felt pain after pain that he was so much aware of them disappeared. By the time the Baal Shem Tov finished the reading of that section of the Kel of the Curses, Rabbi Benhaim felt that he's a new man, healthy, no pain anymore. It's like those curses has the magical effect on him that completely removed every single malady that from which he suffered. And that's one story that teaches us a very important message. We shouldn't be afraid of the words of the Torah. We should love the words of the Torah and use them as awakening words, not something to fear and then to go and hide from them. Because how can anybody hide from God? Even Cain, when he killed his brother, he thought he can hide from God. Or like King David, he said in his words of Tehillim, Ana mipanecha isater. Can I hide from you? What is there is there. And what we do, we have to, unless if we do teshuvah, we have to know that we have to expect payment of some kind. But at the same time, by hearing and listening to the tocheha, the rebuke and the reprimands of the Torah, we will gather a tremendous benefit that will heal us. On the contrary, instead of bringing tragedies upon us, we will bring healing upon us. And that is something that one has to learn. And that's story number one for tonight. But since we are now before Shavuot, how can we move on without saying something about the Torah? The Torah is the gift that God bestowed upon the Jewish people, and He gave it to us on the mountain of Sinai on the 6th of Sivan, which is the day of Chag HaShavuot. You know, Torah is the cure for every person who learns Torah. It's a source of tremendous joy, tremendous satisfaction, tremendous benefit, It's a gift that has no equal. And anyone who learns Torah knows that. One who does not learn the Torah, obviously, how can he believe in that? Like it says, how can you believe something that you don't know the taste? You never tasted, you will never know what kind of food is this. You might even dislike it because you don't know anything about it. That's exactly what happens with the Torah. But God gave us the Torah on such a day, and with the gift of the Torah, every Jew was crowned with Keter Torah, with the crown of Torah. And thus, we can say that we are a nation of kings, just because of the Torah. If God did not give us the Torah, we would never be called the chosen people. We would never be called the children of princes, like it says in the book of Shemot, when God proclaimed us to be a nation of kings, a nation of priests. In the words of the Torah, "Ve'atem tihiu li bnei melachim vegoy kadosh," He shall be for me like the children of kings and the nation that is holy. What gave us all this is only the gift of Torah. And God says, "Ki lekachtov natati lachem torati al ta'azovu." Hashem says, I have given you a great merchandise, a tremendous and beautiful gift that I have given you. Do not abandon it. It's Torati. It's my Torah that I have given you. So imagine when a father gives his son his greatest possession, that only testifies to the fact of how much the father loves his son, that he gives him his best gift. That's exactly what God has done with the Jewish people. By giving us the Torah, He gave us His personal gift. That's what it means. Ki lekachtov natati lachem torati al ta'azovu. And you know, life, we go through so many changes in life. Life comes to us, to every one of us in different ways. This one suffers, this one enjoys more than others life. And everyone has his own experience in life, whether it's bad or good. And we know that things have an effect on the way we think. There are people who, because they suffer too much, that's why they become softer and humbler and nicer to other people. When the Jewish people were in the land of Egypt as slaves, they were united like one feeling the pain of others. When you have pain and you know that the other one has also pain, then you go and help him, knowing that you have the same pain. That's what Yisurin, that's what pain does to people, what it's supposed to do. What suffering is supposed to do for people is not to get a negative effect from that, is only to get a positive one. Because suffering helps to remember God. Suffering helps us to turn to God, that our eyes turn to Him to ask Him, please help us. Automatically you become refined, you become softer, and then you start thinking about the needs of others. Otherwise, a guy who doesn't have any pain, how can he understand the pains of others? Our sages said in the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin that the Sanhedrin, the members of the Sanhedrin, were not chosen to serve in the Sanhedrin just like that. If, for example, he could be the greatest rabbi, if he doesn't have children, he was not to be chosen to serve as a judge in the Sanhedrin, in the court of Sanhedrin. Why? Because he has no children, so therefore he doesn't know the labor that is required for children. He doesn't know the suffering that one endures when he has many children. So therefore, how can he judge others when he doesn't know their pain? That's why, according to the Talmud, the halakha says he is not to serve in the Sanhedrin if he doesn't have any children. The same thing also for any suffering. If one doesn't suffer at all in life, how can he understand the suffering of others? Now, there is no question about it that we don't want suffering. Nobody wants suffering. Like the Gemara says, lo hem velo secharam. We don't want suffering, and we don't want also their reward. Why? Because there is also a side that is dangerous when suffering comes upon a person. People are supposed to become better when they have pain and suffering. But there are other people who, because of suffering, they give up on God and they become vicious. They become bad. Why? Because they suffer. So now they want others also to suffer. And at the same time, they don't want to hear about God anymore, because they feel that they are so angry at God that now the first thing that they hate is, for example, their own rabbi. That's for example. He hates his own rabbi. Why? Because he's suffering. So he hates God, so he expresses his hatred towards his rabbi. There's some says, I think like this happens. It happens. And when it happens, it's very painful. Why? Because it's unbelievable. The message was missed. There is suffering. Let's say somebody is taking care of his old mother, and his mother is suffering terribly for many years. And him and his sister, for example, take care of their mother. And they take care of their mother for many, many years. And everybody understands their plight and their tremendous suffering. And all those years, those people were good. And suddenly they became vicious. Very vicious. Why? Because they suffered. Unfortunately, it's a double tragedy. The first tragedy is that they are still suffering. The second tragedy, that instead of using that suffering to become better, they became worse and worse. So you have this and that, unfortunately. So that's the way it is. Many times, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends all kinds of things. Many times life comes to people, either it changes them to the best or to the worst. So that's the reason why it's very possible that a person could change just because he suffers, or just because there is a change in the world. There is a new movement in the world, a new society, modernism, for example. Here, before, he belonged to a society that was not as modern, therefore he was a very good, humble man. Now suddenly he was transported to a world of refinement, modernism. And now suddenly he forgets his upbringing, he forgets his family, and he becomes almost a goy. He forsakes his mitzvot, his Torah and everything, and he becomes mamash a goy. Many Jews even became literal goyim. Some others, they forsook their tradition and they became atheists. And that's unfortunately what could happen, as it happened in the Holocaust in Germany. Many people, of course, fewer people perhaps, because of the tremendous blow that the Jewish people received with the Holocaust, some of them, they discovered God because of the suffering. But many of them, even though they came from houses of great rabbis and where Torah was all over, nevertheless, because of the terrible blow of the Holocaust, they stopped believing in God and they became atheists. It's most unfortunate, because we don't know where is the truth. And one, we have to believe at least in the tradition of our forefathers. They told us this is what it is. We have to believe in it. And nothing will make sense. Absolutely nothing will make sense if we don't believe in God. Because even though there are many things that we do not understand, that Hashem does and we do not understand, we think it's very cruel. And only after a long time passes, that's when we discover that this was not in fact cruelty, it was the greatest compassion and kindness. We can talk about this for many, many hours. But that's something that is definitely proven. That many things that we have thought that are bad, in fact turned out to be the best for us. Here is a guy, he loses his job. He thinks his world has crumbled upon him. The first thing that he does, he closes the book on God, and he doesn't want to see anymore the synagogue. When he doesn't realize that perhaps he was the reason, because he was fired, that's why 10 years later he became a millionaire. Of course you understand the point. There are many people who, because they lost their job, they went to other areas in which they succeeded very much and they became very rich. Whereas if they stayed in the same job, they would still be just simple workers, simple employees of the bank, for example. And that's what our sages said in the Mishnah, in Masechet Berachot, Hayav Adam levarech ala ra'a keshem shemevarech ala tova. one is under the obligation to bless the Lord, even for bad, as he is obligated to bless the Lord for good things. Why? Farshim explained it's because we don't know really what is good and what is bad. What appears to be good can turn out to be the worst. You could become rich today, the next day the mafia will kidnap you because of that. Never know. Sometimes you get something very hard, very hurting, and this was the reason why he came to a different world of tremendous Yeshua and salvation for you. We don't know the ways of God, but it is our obligation to believe in Hashem and in His Torah. And the Torah that He gave us at the mountain of Sinai says it all. There is nothing that was not written in the Torah. Of course, one has to learn. How can you judge the Torah if you don't come to learn it every day? That's the way it is. Of course, unfortunately, there were many people from the yeshiva about 200 years ago, 50 years ago, in the time which was called the time of the Haskalah movement, the Enlightenment movement, the Emancipation Age. At that time, hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of Bachurei Yeshiva, of people of the Yeshiva that came out from the world of Torah, and they went directly to the churches, or they became atheists. Even Nachman Bialik, the famous author, the Hebrew author, he himself was a Bachurei Yeshiva, Yeshiva Bocher, had great knowledge of Torah, and yet he came out to be an atheist. That's what they say. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But that's what happened to many of our brothers, unfortunately. But it's silly not to believe in the Torah. Like the Torah says in Parashat Azinu, She'al avicha v'yagedecha zekenecha v'yomeru lach. Why do you have to bother with your own philosophies, with your own thoughts, with your own ideas? All you have to do, ask your father, your grandfather, your ancestors. They will tell you. And they know the truth. All you have to do is to follow their way. And even enhance it if possible. That's the way. But usually when people go into the world of Torah, in most cases at least, the Torah will bring life again to them, even in times of terrible tragedies and terrible changes. But if he has a load of Torah in his heart, that light of Torah will bring him back and give him life again. This is what our sages said in the Gemara. Kol mi sheyesh bo or Torah mehayyehu. Anyone who has even a little bit, a spark of Torah, that spark of Torah will bring life into him. That could be interpreted in many ways. One of them is the way we say it, that even in times that are very bad, but if you have years of Torah in you, a load of Torah within you, then there are many chances that even if you leave, you will come back. And when you come back, that means life has been given to you again. Because our sages said, without Torah, there's no life. Life is Torah is your life and the length of your days. What is it that a man, a Jew, without Torah, how can he consider himself? What can he consider himself? In which way? Like the Talmud says, the Gemara says, Lule, if it was not for the day of Shavuot, the day of Matan Torah, Kama Yosef Ika Beshuka. There are many of Yosef in the world. So who are they? Nothing. But Rav Yosef said, I am a man of Torah. I am not any Yosef. I am a Yosef of Torah. Otherwise, how many Yosef you have in the market? Plenty. It is the Torah that gives importance to a person. If you have Torah, you have a tremendous capacity of nobility, of importance, of consideration. People will respect you, will honor you. That's what the Torah does. I'll tell you a story for tonight with which we will conclude. About 200 years ago, the famed yeshiva of Volozhin and his famed Rosh Yeshiva was Rab Chaim of Volozhin. He was the famed disciples of the Gra, of the Vilna Gaon. And he had his yeshiva of Volozhin, which was the most famous yeshiva at that time. Was this the only yeshiva that never stopped in the day or in the night. There was a mishmara in the day and a mishmara in the night. And the Rav Chaim of Volozhin was there all the time. coming back and forth to visit the yeshiva and to see that everything is in order. He had thousands of talmidim, of students. Among them, 3 were known to be the best. Among the best. What were the characteristics of those 3 students? One of them was a yachsan. A yachsan means a man whose family was very important. He had behind him an ancestry of at least 7 generations of rabbis. So he himself was a man of yichus, so to speak, like a man of pedigree, nobility. So because of that, he was known to be a very important student. The second student was a man of tremendous character, good character, the best, humble, kind, helping each other, helping one another. A man who had the perfection of character. The third student was known in particular because of his sharp mind and his steadiness of learning Torah. He never stopped. Day or night, he's always there to study. One day, life changed. Whether it was the time of emancipation, the time of that we call the Haskalah movement, the Enlightenment, and Jews. Society changed. Suddenly, anti-Semitism was not anymore as virulent as it used to be before. And since the time of Moses Mendelssohn, who was the father of the Reform movement, even though he himself was an Orthodox, but he believed if the Jews will hide their Jewishness, maybe the world will not hate that much the Jews. And that's how the Reform movement started. And the Haskalah movement went on and became very popular. And it affected even the people who were learning in the yeshiva. Of course, together with all the terrible things that happened from the Russian government, from Europe and East Europe and so forth, many left the yeshiva, whether it is the Volodyin yeshiva or Slobodka yeshiva. I even met one day an old rabbi in Scarsdale. I went to see one of his Sifrei Torah, and the man has no kippah, no cover. And he told me that he was very old then, was eating without netilat yadayim. I couldn't believe it. So he said he was the rabbi of a Reform congregation. And what he told me, suddenly he revealed to me that he used to be a yeshiva student in Slobodka yeshiva. Slobodka yeshiva brought to the world some of the greatest luminaries of Torah. And he was there. But he was among those who left to go to seek modernism and to forsake and reject Judaism. Ultimately, he came to America, and then he became a rabbi because of the knowledge that he had, but he became the rabbi of a Reform movement in which the congregation themselves, being ignorant, they didn't realize that their own rabbi is the real evil of that congregation. But that's a different story. And I'm coming back again to Rabbi Chaim Volodyin. Those 3 students, they left. Because of that time, those 3 students left. The Rabbi Chaim Volodyin, was broken-hearted over that. And he was crying. One night he slept and he was dreaming. And lo and behold, the Vilna Gaon, his old teacher, the great Grami Vilna, came to him in a vision in the dream. And he said to him, "My son, don't cry. Everything is in the hands of God, and God has a book of everyone. And let me tell you something. Maybe 2 of those 2 students disappeared. What can we do? But one of them will come back. The one who used to study Torah all day and all night, he'll come back." And the rabbi woke up and he found consolation to his heart from that dream. Here is what happened. That young man who used to be a yachsan, the man who had a family, a very important family, 7 generations of rabbis, became a goy, a non-Jew. The second, who was formidable in his kindness and his good character, was not enough to save him. He became a professor of mathematics in one of the biggest universities in Russia or Austria. He became a big professor, but Judaism, forget it, finished. Not one of the two came back, ever. The third one, who had Torah in him, he is the one who came back. When he came back one day, he was already old. He also became a big professor. But then one day, that's what he told to Rabbi Chaim. He came to Rabbi Chaim Volozhin. He says, I want to go back again. I want to go back to where I came from. So the rabbi said, what happened to you? Why? Why did you come back? He said to him, one day, after I abandoned everything and I rejected Judaism and Torah, it happened that I was in one of the streets, small streets of one Jewish place in Russia. And he heard in a small synagogue the sound of some people studying Torah with a musical, with a tune, like, in the yeshiva they learn. When I heard the tune, it was so beautiful. It reminded me of my own tunes that I used to sing when I used to study Torah. And I said to myself, this is what I have rejected? And I made a resolution to come back, and here I am back. And lo and behold, he came back, and now he became a big Talmid Chacham. This teaches us that the Torah has a tremendous effect on the one who learns it. No matter what the circumstances of the world are, and no matter how they change in life, but there is more hope for someone who learned Torah to stick to his ancestry and the Jewish tradition than others. You could be the best character, you could be the most marvelous man, but if you have no Torah, we cannot rely, we cannot be sure that nothing will happen to you, nothing will offset your balance of Judaism. But when you have Torah, of course there are always exceptions, but when you have plenty of Torah in you, usually the Torah will save you and bring you back to your people. We hope and pray that this Shavuot that's coming to us in a few days, Chag Matan Torah, should bring with it upon us the blessing of Torah to all of us and Am Israel, and may all the Jewish people, whether you work or not work, whatever it is, but at least something of Torah should be yours. Like Torah, like it says in the Torah, Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kehillat Yaakov. The Torah is in the inheritance of every Jew. What a pity that someone is born as a Jew and does not benefit from it. And the only way to benefit from the fact that you are a Jew is learn Torah. Even King David said in the book of Tehillim in Psalm number 119, Lule Toratcha sha'ashu'ai, az avati be'onyi. If it was not for the Torah, that is my pleasure, and I would be lost in my troubles and my suffering. There's only one thing that helps us in life, and truly we know it is true. But it is most unfortunate that one is born as a Jew, and yet does not do much with his Judaism. To be a good man, even non-Jews can be good men, there's no problem. But to be a Torah man is a person who knows how to use the crown of Torah, such a gift that was given to him by God himself. Chag Sameach.